life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk. Hi, I'm Byrne, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk. It's a television series in an essay format about life living, making a living, and sometimes loving. And occasionally we're blessed with a guest, and such is the case this evening. A fellow by the name of Rick Walker, known Rick for a number of years now. He has been a national sales director. He's got extensive sales experience in the computer industry, software industry, high-tech business anyway.
Right.
And some multi-level experience and a potpourri of background that kind of opens this thing up to you. And you've seen a lot. I think one of your jobs at one time was traveling around the country working with sales managers.
Exactly.
So a lot of the things that you might address this evening is based on a lot of exposure. Now, my understanding is that you want to ask me how this got started and what we're going on, but I'm not going to try to do the interview for you. Rick Walker, nice to have you here.
Thank you, Byrne. Good to be here. Well, you know, we've been talking off camera about different things in sales and selling, and you know, let's get on the camera and talk about a few things. And one of them is just this issue of, if let's say you're a sales manager and you're wondering, you know, how do I get the results out of the people that I have that I really want to have the results, and why won't they do what I think they should be doing, and they won't turn in their, you know, do their work, and they're not meeting their quotas, and you know, these kinds of things. Why the turnover? Why do I have the turnover?
It's a common malady, isn't it?
Sure is, yeah.
I remember I guess now 4 or 5 years ago, being introduced to an organization called, I believe, ExecTech.
You've mentioned that, right?
Yeah, and it was an international organization for CEOs and business owners. And they're pretty serious about what they're doing. As I recall, their annual membership fee is $3,000. I believe they have a $400 or $500 a month enrollment or membership dues. And then, of course, they have the dinners they pay for when they get together and this type of thing. And so you can say they're serious about what they're doing.
Well, what is it that this group has in common in reference to sales managers and or the sales force of their companies? There's something...
Yeah, they're all CEOs and business owners, and most of them, of course, have sales forces. Because typically what happens in our society, in the business community, is that you develop a product or a service, and in order to distribute it and get it sold, well, you have to have a sales force. And the reason I even brought that up is that within the environs of that society, that group, you know, there is a common discord internationally, and that's their concern about their sales managers. The wonder of it all. Why they have the same questions you do, and I'm sure a lot of sales managers wonder why. And we can't solve it in a moment, but I will tell you that in a few hours we can provide information where they'll perceive that experience entirely different.
And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah. Fortunately, see, the thing is we have to work with is this. In 1957, I recognized a reality that still seems to be apparent when we go out and talk with these people, that in the sales industry, as in most things, let's see, I got a
one side there.
There we go. We're getting about 80% of the results out of 20% of the people societally. Or this might even be true in companies where their salespeople are salaried, cars are provided, expense accounts, and what have you. Overall, if there's any size to this organization, they're going to get 80% of the results, and 80% of the income is being enjoyed by 20% of the people.
And there's an ill feeling about the 80%.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And now that's in the traditional selling. We have the more challenging environments where people are on straight commission, quote, quote. They sell direct to consumer oftentimes, like vacuum cleaners and cookware and, seminars, It goes on, and there it's 90-10. That's 90% of the results are coming out of 10% of the people, which is not very good. And then, of course, there's a multi-level industry that's getting about 97-3. That's 97% of the money being enjoyed, and it's a huge amount, but it's being enjoyed by only 3% of the people. This does not indict selling, nor creative direct selling or the multi-level market.
No.
It does indict our preparation and our apparent capacity to prepare people to do the job. In other words, this is a common malady, and I recognized it in 1957 that there was a mainstream of information being taught out here by the industry. Things that are being said, for example, are you got to see it big, keep it simple. And they usually say, see it big, keep it simple, stupid. I've always been a little bit put off by SIBKIS when SIBKIS is plenty. These people aren't stupid because oftentimes they'll leave the sales environment and go and distinguish themselves in other environments. So maybe it's not that individual, it's something they don't understand or something that's not being taught.
Well, you just opened up the lid on an issue that personally I have challenges with, and that's the element of fear that's in this selling environment, emanating from either the sales manager or even higher up, but certainly in that whole environment.
It comes at the salesman from all directions.
Right.
I mean, my gosh, their innate fear of going out and encountering people's fear in the marketplace. Right. See, a lot of people haven't identified this, but one of the things that makes selling so challenging for most people is what they're really encountering all day long, every day, is other people's fear. Exactly. Oh, it's disguised as anxiety, apprehension, predisposition, attitude, what have you, but it's really they're encountering fear. And then that's compounded by the fact that they have quotas put on them. They have to make a report to the sales manager. They have to be accountable to their family and to their wife when they go home at night. I mean, it's coming at you from all angles, and it's a very lonely place. It makes it very, very challenging.
We got fear-filled salespeople going out into the marketplace, encountering, so we get
fear-filled prospects.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you put fear with fear, and you've got a potential volatility there that makes it difficult. Now, it doesn't have to be that way, but the fact is that's what we're dealing with. And you know what happens, and I can really understand. My first day in selling, I mean, I couldn't wait to get started. A man was kind enough to loan me a sample kit because I didn't have enough money to buy one. This was back in 1955. Right. The Navy lost my pay records, had no money, needed to make some, and I got into this cutlery business. And boy, I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And I couldn't wait to get started. Couldn't get any training. No one would take me out in the field. Found out later most of them weren't going out. But anyway, that's another issue. And I remember he loaned me this sample kit and all these premiums to go sell with, and I got in the car and took off, couldn't wait to get started. And that day was the most fear-filled, anxious day I've ever had at that point in my life. I've had some sense, too. And we're never totally immune. It's really eerie. It's kind of like selling business is show business. And you know why they call it the green room on the what is it, Jay Leno show? Yeah. People wait in there to come out and expose themselves to the world, and they get sick in there. That's why they call it a green room.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, professional people doing what they do normally in total apprehension. They say that Enrico Caruso, the greatest singer that ever lived, was a mental midget before every single performance. He had the greatest voice, accoladed throughout the world, and yet every time that he had to go out there and hit the note, he was in terrible shape. Now, once he was there, see, once you're there, it seems to change somehow, but getting there is just horrible.
Oh, everybody knows the highs and lows in selling, and it feels great to come out of a good call. Well, that was a Class A call. So that first day that you're talking about, how many of our viewers are actually saying, you know what, I keep having that first day?
Oh, and I'm still subject to it after all these years.
So might we discuss what leads up to that first day, not going away into the past, never to be seen again?
Here's what happens. Fear, and by the way, any anxiety is just carefully disguised fear.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And it's one of the primary or even primal emotions that at any given moment in time experience and research has shown that you're either in a fear mode or a love mode. Okay, and I'm not talking about the sexual connotation, but the capacity to be outside of yourselves, concerned, elevating, enriching, enhancing something or someone else.
A true affinity for the environment.
Yeah,
yes.
right. It's a wonderful place to be. However, most of us are functioning, if we don't know how to get up there, are functioning in fear, which means fight, flee, or freeze. Now, my first day, and I'm still subject to it, if I don't have the tools to work with, my first day, I fled and froze up the biggest part of the day. 189 city miles driving, couldn't stop the car, and wanting to every single minute. I was motivated, I was inspired, I was facilitated, everything was in place, and I had the need, I mean, everything was there, and I couldn't stop the car, okay? And when I did, I started it up and left because I wasn't getting out of it. You know what I mean? In other words, 180 miles. That's 2 out of 3. I finally quit that day for the, I think, 6th or 7th time. You know, I quit and rehire yourself, how you do. On my way home, after finally quitting, I went into a rage. I really got angry.
So
in other words,
you did it mad.
Yeah, I got into a fight mode, okay? And I said I was going to stop this car and I was going to knock on the door, and if they give me any trouble, I'd knock their head off because I could do that. You know what I mean?
Okay, now how many of our sales managers in sales meetings, they finally, you know, I'm just going to have to get down on these guys.
Yep, and that's what we're left with. See, if we don't know how to teach, how to sell, how to communicate, how to persuade out of love, then we better teach them how to do it aggressively. And so the language of selling comes out of that. For example, don't take no for an answer. That's pretty aggressive language. You mean to tell me if you come into my home and I'm not going to take
or
no,
office, place of business,
and I say no and you're not going to take it, I mean we're going to have a problem.
And what about, I'm the sales manager and I tell the staff, no, you have to control the account and you have to overcome and handle their objections.
That's
Get
right.
in there and control them.
That's aggressive. See,
Now,
it's all based on this.
So what's the chance a salesperson leaving one of these motivational sales meetings with this kind of talk and going out and possibly being inappropriate, completely inappropriate with...
Well, look at their reputation.
Yeah. Where does it, so that's where it comes from?
Oh, yeah, I think so. A lot of inappropriate behavior comes from a whole accumulation of fear. Some of it justified, some of it irrational. Okay?
Why?
Now, so there's a whole different language that can be taught that can move this up here, because I'll tell you, love is a lot more powerful. A lot more powerful.
Let's show them how it is.
Yeah. For example, yeah, you've mentioned some of the other language, like handle and overcome, don't take no, you know, this kind of thing.
Maybe some wisdoms that are not.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of consciousness research, working with people over the years, plus coupled with my own personal experience in the field, because I've had more time on sales calls than I've had at home or in the rest of my life.
Right.
I've been out there more, perhaps, than I've been in, if you know what I'm saying.
I know that.
It became pretty apparent after a number of years, and then, of course, you begin to certify this, that this is a circle graph that represents all the sales that are made. The way I depict it normally is that about 30% of those sales, now these are the sales that are made, 30% of those sales are made just because you're there.
Just showing up at the office,
yeah.
showing up at the site.
Yeah, just being there with your
Just being
product
there.
and service, okay? Just being there. It's really odd. Now, what's really odd to me is that sales managers oftentimes call these the mullets, the suckers, the rollovers. You know what I mean? In other words, yeah, rather than honoring that, the fact that those people identified a need, didn't let the salesperson get in the way, and bought, they shouldn't be diminished for that. They should be celebrated. Okay. Now, how many sales aren't made, however, because the guy is driving around in the car, or doing paperwork, or going to the bank, or hiding out in a movie theater? See, a lot of calls aren't made because of that. And the fact that 30% of the sales that are made just because you're there, that's encouraging. I mean, that's
pretty
uplifting.
good. That's where the bluebirds are.
That's right. Now, if you're fearful, that's why you're not there. So, if we can somehow re-prepare a salesperson in the language that they employ and what have you, and make it easier for them to be there, then everybody gets more sales. Now, another exciting figure is that on top of that, about 55% of the sales that are made, which takes up about the whole circle, this is 30%, plus or minus, of course.
Now, just to comment on that 30%, Bern, that 30% is a pretty good number. It's bigger than I think most folks would realize.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
The flip side to that 30% is not enough to live on. It's not enough to stay in selling. And the sales manager, actually, that's not acceptable.
You might squeak by on some quotas.
Well, here's this 8 out of 10 Salesforce is 80%.
Oh, yeah.
It's at 30% and a little bit more. Maybe.
Yeah, they're getting some of the there.
Exactly.
55% more of the sales will be made because the salesperson or someone cares. Okay? Number one, because you're there. Number two, because you care. What does that mean, care? Well, you care about the prospect and their needs, number one. In other words, it's like getting outside of yourself and forgetting your personal need and devoting yourself to them and communicating, correlating your product and service, addressing their considerations instead of handling their objections, resolving reservations that they might have, and do it with some compassion and concern, and the sales are made. Or this salesperson is adoptable. Now, this is a double entendre. Salesperson has to learn how to adopt people and has to be adoptable. What does that mean? Well, that they come from a posture of, like I say, of communication. They're good listeners. They truly listen. They're patient. They're gracious. They're sensitive. In other words, some of the facets of love that we talk about in Life Formula. Okay, so here's the thing.
This is a me first world, so who should probably go first?
Oh, them.
The salesperson.
Well, no. Okay, what do you mean now?
I mean, in a me first world, should I, as a salesperson, should I wait for my prospect, my client to adopt me, or should I adopt them first?
Yeah, you got to adopt them, which makes you more adoptable.
Exactly.
Now, sometimes it'll happen before you get it done. I've been in situations where it was evident that they liked me. I don't know why. Maybe I reminded them of their son that was killed in Korea, or maybe they have a Santa Claus syndrome or something. I don't know. But yeah, I had been bought into, which made it very easy. Oh, and by the way, when someone has adopted you, it's very difficult to misrepresent and shade the truth and stretch it. It's very difficult to be overly aggressive with them.
Exactly.
See what I'm saying? So it works both ways.
So all the communication and all the understanding that's necessary for a business to go right suddenly just flows, doesn't
Exactly.
it?
Exactly. Now, a lot of things get in here that are subconscious, subliminal. This is just not all surface stuff. For example, I compare this to, I've seen this happen a lot over the years. I'm going to get my thick one here.
While you're drawing that, that's a lot of the business right there and getting the business done.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, the other 15% comes because the salesperson is aware.
Now, aware of what, Vern?
Closing techniques, just the right story to tell, when to keep quiet. In other words, what we spend so much time on makes so few of the actual sales.
Now, I'm telling you, in all the years that I've been in sales groups being managed, quite frankly, that 15% seem to be the larger percentage of what's being communicated. So we're going to fly in the face of a little bit of some of the conventional sales training and sales talk.
And don't you think we should when you look at the results?
We have to. Because
see, this is where I've been coming from for a half a century now, that we've got to stop and say, wait a minute.
What's happening?
What's happening? How come, no matter all of our best efforts, these things continue? We're overlooking something.
Something is amiss.
And here's where I think, well, I know a lot of it is. I have this thing I call the twilight zone. And people come into the selling environment usually by accident. Very few people were brought up by their families to be salespeople.
In other words, I hadn't planned on being in selling,
That's right.
but
here I am. Yeah.
Right.
They didn't go to school for it and what have you. And even those who did, there is a couple of colleges in the country who have majors on creative direct selling, and I have had the occasion to recruit 2 of them in the past, and neither one of them made it because they were teaching them the typical stuff. Now, this person comes into selling, and the sales company appropriately now, there's no indictment here, teaches them the product. You got to know the product. And they teach them how to sell that product. And yet, a lot of them bog down right in here somewhere and never get out of the birth canal. In other words, they get stuck.
30, 60, 90, 120. Or
exactly. Oh, and there is a maturation in the turnover thing. It's just so accurate, it's spooky. And you just named some of them, 6 weeks, You know, 3 months, 1 year, 2 years, they're gone.
Or some people stay stuck in this canal for years.
For a long, long time.
And
never get out of it. The idea is that they get through this birth canal and then they mature and grow and actually change. Because over here, they come into the environment as buyers, non-buyers.
Now, what does that really mean?
You know, we all, every adult out here has bought stuff, and every one of us have not bought. In other words, every one of us have walked into a store and someone says, "May I help you?" And say, "Oh, no, I'm just shopping." You know, where indeed you're looking for something. You know what I mean? That's the non-buyer. They just somehow get spooky when someone approaches them. Or the non-buyer who has received phone calls and not bought. And yet some of us have bought. I've bought on the phone, I bought at the door, and I bought in the store. And so we're buyers, non-buyers, and we have an idea about the way that's supposed to work from that perspective. Okay? And then we come into selling, and they say, well, now that you're a salesman, you have to handle and overcome, you've got to, you know, all this kind of stuff. And you say, wait a minute. And so you're here so that you do the best you can, and you can get stuck there. And I have seen people at the end of their career still have their buyer, non-buyer dominate their life.
Especially if I've been told all these admonitions, and I believe that the 15% be aware all the techniques is the senior data that I need to emerge. That could be difficult, couldn't it?
Say this again.
If I've been given the admonitions, got to learn how to overcome and handle objections,
right.
Don't take no for an answer, right. Control, you know, the account, and I believe that doing those things plus that 15%, the techniques of closing, those are the main things that I'm going to need to emerge and be larger from the experience. I'm in trouble.
You could get stuck. Right?
You could get stuck, and that's exactly what happens to folks, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to become a seller, non-seller. Seller, non-seller. What this means is you have to accept your authority. That's what happens to these people down here. See, here's the thing. Good job's being done here. Not going to deny that. So what's happening? Well, there's a question mark back here in that person's life that brings them to this place. Okay? In other words, they have been de-prepared by well-meaning and loving parents, by siblings, by their teachers, by the church, and by previous employers. You know, they've been de-prepared to be free and to be independent and to be effective as communicators. What does this mean? What do you mean de-preparation?
That's an important one.
Okay.
Yes.
One common one, of course, is that a parent will tell a child, don't talk to strangers, over and over and over again. And so all of a sudden, now that's what he's got to do.
Every day.
For example, the average salesperson out here, particularly in creative direct selling, is probably going to have to talk to, I would think, in a neighborhood of 9,000 new people this year. 9,000 people. And the mind goes, what? 9,000 contacts? How is that even possible? Well, that's 30 a day, okay, which would be, or maybe about 3 to 4 hours work, okay? Where you say a little bit to a lot of people, looking for those who are responsive so that you can do your thing. It's just amazing. Now, more back about here. Don't talk to strangers. You'll never amount to anything. You're a slow learner. Don't tease. You know, all the admonitions that we get, practice makes perfect, gets right in the way, right in the way. Or if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well, gets right in the way. Because, I mean, how can you do it well if you don't get started, if you don't practice?
Well, what does Nike say?
Yeah, I know, just do it. You know, I'm not ready for my Super Bowl. I mean, I'm still practicing. Oh, and I've had mentors. I mean, international motivational speakers say, life, I mean, this is no dress rehearsal. This is it. Well, that doesn't have to be true at all. See, it can be one long dress rehearsal if you stay in the practice process.
As long as you're practicing.
Yeah. Very, very important. So it's a matter of re-preparing people. I call it Velcroizing them. In other words, with a minimum amount of material, people can re-perceive their past, recapture some of their authority, elevate their esteem, and then this stuff really seems to take hold.
Now, if I may, to substantiate why this works, and it's a good thing, if they're practicing and they're emerging, There's 30% just being there, another 55% by caring, being adoptable. There's 85% of the business that they can start to enjoy while they're growing and emerging.
Exactly.
That's the beauty of this.
Yeah. And I have had, and you've met them, and I think you may be a partial benefactor of this. Time and time again, I have had people who were neophytes, not doing well, really accelerate. And just as importantly, people who are doing outstanding jobs do 300% and 400% increases. You know the story, like Freddie Mac. You've met Freddie, I think, the other day. He was an electronics sales type guy and doing quite well. And went through the series, and because of the recapturing of authority, some elevation of esteem, and some new language that he had, and stepping away from results orientation, that's what was killing him. See, every time he made a call, he wanted a sale. Well, after a while, if you don't know where to go to get the sale,
you don't
go.
Exactly
you
right.
busy yourself with other stuff. And so he just surrendered that altogether. Rick, we've dashed through this so quickly. Our time is already nearly up. This has been Life Talk. It's a weekly television show about life, living, and making a living. People can call us at 800-661-3490. They can check in at our website, www.burnmoses.com, and find out a lot about what we're doing. And I want to thank everybody for visiting with us this evening.
Me too.
And I think maybe we should continue this next week, just in case we can splice and edit some of this into one great tape.
You bet.
Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed it.